The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're about 2 minutes out from getting started, so I just wanted to greet everybody before we do, and just ask that everybody be patient. We are expecting a few more attendees joining us, so I just want to give them an opportunity to join the room before getting started. So it'll be momentary. Hello, everyone, and happy Tuesday. We today are going to be covering quite a bit of information, actually, that I'm hoping will be useful for all of you right now, given the current situation. We've all been sort of thrown into a collide of the various roles that we all do carry and that we all do have to manage on a day-to-day basis. And that's sort of why we've titled it Call to Triple Duty, as a result of managing all those expectations. So before we get started, I'd like to sort of look at acknowledging that together we gather in this special place to continue our learning journey together. We take a moment to recognize that today's presentation is being held on the traditional and unceded territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, as well as the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, including Inuit and Métis peoples. We acknowledge and pay tribute to all Aboriginal peoples who live either in the Greater Toronto region or elsewhere in Canada and beyond. We honor their courageous leaders of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So before we go into some of the topics that we're going to be addressing today, there's just some rules of engagement that I want to sort of cover with you with regards to your active participation and how you and I can sort of engage with each other during our time. So you will all see your control panel, and that will house not only a microphone, as well as a hand icon. So I do encourage active participation throughout the presentation. And while I will sort of have a Q&A session at the end, please don't hesitate to either pose a question within the question box or raise your hand for mic privileges to ask the question live. I want to make sure that this is a valuable experience for everyone, and your participation will allow that to happen. Now, also within your control panel, you'll see a little tab that says handouts. So what I've provided you here are 3 specific handouts that I think will be useful, 2 of which pertain to material that we will talk about and good resources to have after today's presentation, and then also including our up-to-date webinar calendar with other topics that are coming down the road. So we find ourselves in an unprecedented time. However, it has allowed us much needed time to take an inventory on how things have been going and provide us the opportunity to sort of recalibrate the various roles we have to manage. This unprecedented time has really paved the way for us to reflect and collaborate and be creative on the journey to raising great parents. And yes, you heard me correctly. I did say the journey we are on is to raise great parents. Now, many parents find themselves getting caught up in short-term sort of parenting, and that just again has to deal with the routine and structure that we all find ourselves in of having to go to work, get our kids ready for school or daycare, whatever the case may be. And with our current situation, we've lost some of that routine. We've lost some of that sort of comfortability and familiarity. And we are finding ourselves having to navigate a land that is foreign to us. And how I sort of see things playing out in part of the discomfort of the COVID disruption is we're trying to shift between power struggles and teamwork. And when I'm talking about power struggles, we'll sort of get into that in the next slide, but it's important to understand that part of the distress that all of us are experiencing has a lot to do with the type of environments and the type of relationships we've been accustomed to having. We have been, sort of raising our children and working within an age of entitlement where, our lives have sort of transitioned from a lot of the necessities of natural existence to a routine of comfort and unrealistic confidence from some, and sort of that demand of knowing that what you are asking for is going to be returned, whether it be a question, whether it be finances, whatever the case may be. We find ourselves currently in a situation of uncertainty and unknown, where we're looking at individuals, or even individuals are looking to us for questions or answers to questions that, while we are all asking them ourselves, we don't have the answers for. So part of what I'm hoping to achieve today is a refocus and a change in perspective to allow us the liberty to sort of be who we are, be forgiving and compassionate of what we need to achieve with all the various roles, but more importantly, also look at what our role is with regards to our children and what are we modeling. Because the one thing that we need to sort of be mindful of is that while our routines have been disheveled and mixed up and sort of thrown up in the air, our children's lives and routines have also been that as well. And what we want to look at and be mindful of is that we want to create a routine and create relationships with our children that's actually sustainable and not a reactive measure to the current situation, but something that will actually not only further develop their abilities and their skill set, but also really create what I call more of the dual type of respect relationship, which is positive overall and is actually sustainable long term. So I introduced you to the concept of power struggle, and that's sort of where part of the concern and challenges and obstacles that we're all facing right now is. And we can only look at, power struggles that exist currently is not only power struggle that we ourselves are having with the various roles that we, have in our day-to-day activity, whether it be professionally or whether it be as a parent or as a spouse or as a partner, as a student. We have all of these roles that are competing with each other right now. We also have a competing role between ourselves and our children. So a solution to part of the struggle is not only sort of changing our old patterns, which do take time and patience, and that sort of is, we're not going to be diving into parenting styles by any means. And though what we will be looking at is adapting a new perspective and learning a new skill that sort of shifts away from trying to control and manage things in how we've been doing and looking more as a cooperative and collaborative relationship with everyone that we're actually coming in contact with. And that does include our children of all ages. So where does that start? Well, part of it is, with an attitude makeover. And we've all, if you've traveled, we've all heard the statement when we're flying, put your oxygen mask on first before getting one on your child or anyone else. And this is a point that really highlights that we are useless to anyone else if we are not functioning properly. So it's a point worth remembering that in our day-to-day lives as parents, all too often we put our own needs on the back burner to meet what we perceive to be the needs of our children. And when we're in our work environment or our school environment, again, it's the same thing. We put our own individual needs on the back burner to achieve what is expected of us in our roles or what we even expect of ourselves. So what our children need and what we need is really well-rested, well-exercised, and well-cared parents. Not only do we function better, but the children actually learn to take care of themselves in a way that we're modeling. And we are the role models of our children. So some approaches will take patience and determination and actually will require us disengaging with our children that decide to sort of retaliate with some misbehavior, which we're going to see and we're going to experience, because children are persistent. They can wear us down, but we can definitely overcome that. And it's not necessarily looking at, parents suddenly being able to juggle everything, because that is just not realistic. So do your best, cut yourself some slack. And it's about looking at how you can provide a good work environment, looking at good communication, and really an effective schedule that is helpful, and most importantly, that your children are entertained, engaged. Part of that is about separating your roles and establishing a shared mindset with everyone in the home. Your children learn by watching your behavior. So what are the ingredients of success? How can we sort of shift gears a little bit and allow not only our children to be a little bit more calm and supported, but also look at our own management of all of the different expectations? And that's exactly what it is. We are fighting, and that power struggle with regards to our various roles is we feel indebted. We feel obligated to be in our best form of all the different roles that we carry, whether it be, again, as an employee to a particular company, or within your role itself within that organization and the various people that you come in contact with, whether it be clients, students, teachers, colleagues. It doesn't really matter. That relationship engagement has sort of been dictated by previous set expectations. And what we find ourselves in right now is a battle of what that is. We can't sustain what has been our normal. We have to look at establishing very clear and set expectations of our new environment and our new requirements. So not only is that setting expectations for yourself, it's setting expectations for your colleagues, and it's setting expectations for your children. After you set these expectations, it's important to enforce boundaries. And what that is really looking at if this is what you've established as non-negotiable expectations to your interactions, to what you are hoping to achieve, to when you can dedicate work time, when it's family time, those unexpected meetings or unexpected phone calls, all of those things require your time. And your time cannot be divided amongst different things. Because unfortunately, when you sort of find yourselves in a position of having to multitask, you are not in your effective and true form. Your attention is divided. So by setting those expectations very clearly as to what and really what you're able to do will really allow people to fall in line with regards to those sort of rules that you've set. Now, part of those expectations is also with regards to what are important expectations and rules that you make for yourself, and really sticking to that. Follow through is key in order for this recipe of success that we're going to be talking to today is actually going to be achieved. Now, it's really important to also appreciate that, many colleagues and many other people that we've come in contact with are struggling with the same issues. So when we are able to be transparent about the conflicting priorities and make sure, that everyone knows what they can expect from you, that's a tactful way of just, again, establishing an understanding. And similarly, be upfront with your kids. You're going to be home, you are home, and that could be quite new to them as well. And they might expect 100% of your attention when that's not realistic. So when we're looking at establishing those expectations of when you are present but not available, that can be a new reality that can be very harsh for your children, depending on how old you are. So what we want to sort of look at is really sort of, again, taking a step back to how we've been accustomed to parenting, how we've been accustomed to maintaining certain family dynamics, and really flip the script a little bit and change it and look at it from a different perspective. These are your colleagues. They're little people, but they've now become your colleagues within the home. And how you would try to manage different relationships in your workplace is really how you can also manage those relationships in the home. And it's about healthy boundaries and very clear and set out expectations. Using age-appropriate language, and we will talk about the various age groups of children and some tips I have with regards to that, and also with regards to keeping them involved. But it's also, allowing your children to be aware of that quiet time that you're needing and how to communicate that. And I've sort of given one little quick tip, which we'll go into more detail again later, is with regards to providing your children with that do not disturb type of nonverbal communication. And we can be creative as to how that looks and what that will achieve. Now, I know that some of you might be asking the question about, okay, well, yeah, this is not necessarily a personal issue. This is a community issue, a worldwide issue, but how do I convey this really tactfully in a straightforward way to my employers who, yes, are experiencing the same thing and though are still requiring me to fulfill that 9 to 5 obligation. So it's simply just, again, being very straightforward. As I transition from working from home, I wanted to share that I am also responsible for my 3 kids, who I will be homeschooling for the time being due to school closures. I'm creating a schedule that I will share with you so that you are aware of when I will be available or unavailable for calls or collaboration. I'm absolutely committed to maintaining the level of excellence you expect. And it's about, again, setting the platform that really allows for a more cooperative and collaborative understanding. And that really opens the door to establishing those boundaries. When we enforce clear boundaries, after you've set them, you have to enforce them. It's not about swaying. It's not about being wishy-washy. Whatever you've established as those parameters to that relationship, you must follow through. And the one thing that I will say in working with children is, boundary setting can be very tricky and they will challenge those boundaries. And though the one thing that children do appreciate the most is consistency and structure and routine. And this is ultimately what we are trying to establish within the parameters that we now face ourselves in. The old routine is not going to be applicable. Aspects might be, and we can definitely look at and adopt some of those strategies or sort of set times aside and adapt them to our new normal. But we find ourselves right now where we actually have the ability and the opportunity to create a new normal. And that to me is exciting. It's about reinventing who you see yourself to be in those various roles that you carry. And it's also providing the foundation to rebuild a different and healthier relationship with not only your children, but also with other family members, which again can be quite exciting and rewarding in the long term. So those boundaries will help achieve that, not only in the work world, but also within your home life. Now here I've also introduced another tip with regards to enforcing boundaries with some of the young ones. And we're looking at, those younger children that demand your attention and that again have all that they know has been the age of entitlement. So that is the I want this now, I want your attention now, and you're going to give it to me now. And part of that is, building that the children's ability to embrace that change. And it's small steps. It's, again, being patient, set, a certain amount of time aside, give warning as to, how much time you've allocated for quiet time or that do not disturb time that you're looking for. Set a visual timer so that the child sees what it looks like, sees the timer counting down. Even if you have to literally have a sign put on your laptop, or if you work in a different space in the room, in the home, have a do not disturb or a sign or a stop sign to indicate to those young children that right now is a time that you are not able to be disturbed. And when that timer goes off, then we can engage. Or when you flip the sign to the green light, they can engage with you, or whatever the case may be with regards to those nonverbal cues that you're providing them in order to manage their expectation of that relationship of interaction with you. On a gradual basis, you slowly increase the amount of time that you are disengaging with your child and having them work on other activities. And we'll talk a little bit about that on an age appropriate level. So one thing that we are really needing at this point in time in order to achieve this hope and this balance and recalibration of managing all of these different expectations, again, of ourselves and that others are putting on us, it really takes flexibility. And we need to embrace that when we're looking at scheduling. So it may not necessarily be tidy. It may not necessarily be, a set 9 to 5 type of schedule that we are able to achieve. And though what we do know is creating a very strict structure and routine can actually lessen the anxiety that not only are we experiencing, but our children are experiencing. So it can actually be quite the tipping point within the individual's experience of what is actually going on and the uncertainty around it. You want to be able to sort of look at splitting up potentially your hours. So again, we've been accustomed to a 9 to 5 type of experience when it comes to school or when it comes to work. And that's just not something that we're able to sustain right now, potentially, especially if, one, you're parenting alone and you don't have a co-parent in the home or on a full-time basis. So when we're looking at our work day and looking at sort of putting that schedule together, I suggest breaking them up and sort of splitting up the hours. So you've got your morning hours, midday, and nighttime work sessions. And it's really looking at, when your children go to bed, when they wake up, as falling into those two buckets. Because what you don't want to lose sight of is we are trying to not only get ourselves on a routine in order to manage all of these different roles, but the key factor is to organize and structure the home routine, which includes your children, in order to achieve and maintain your ability to actually work effectively. So when we're creating that schedule, you're creating the schedule for your kids. And what I mean by that is your kids are not on a staycation. This isn't a vacation. This isn't, mom or dad taking some time away from the office. You still have responsibilities. There's also the situation while we all may sort of have our own opinions of some of the schoolwork that our children have been given and some of the guidance around how the ministry has laid that out for us. And again, we're all entitled to our opinion, and though it is what it is. So we find ourselves also having to take on that role of teacher in some cases. So that's, again, an added sort of component to something that we weren't accustomed to. And though we do have a responsibility to our children and making their routine as normal as possible in the new normal. Stick to consistent bedtimes and consistent wake times. And while we don't have, the factor of travel to be mindful of in that schedule, their wake up time can be a little later, which provides you a longer morning block in order to really look at that particular aspect of your schedule and how you're going to use that. Are you going to use that morning block to work out? Are you going to use it to, just have some me time? Or are you going to use that as work time and get through emails? Look at also involving in that scheduling learning time. So when you do have to take on that role of teacher, looking at playtime. And this is not about family time. This is about activity and being active and being healthy. You really want to slowly, in order to transition everyone and sort of calm things down with regards to the chaos that has been thrown on our lap due to this disruption, is really structure as much of the day as you possibly can. Put family time on the calendar. And this is not about you, getting some work done and your child playing on the floor with a puzzle or playing a video game. That's not family time. This is about establishing a new routine of expectations with all individuals involved and really creating a schedule that dedicates that time together. It's also important to sort of look at, if you do have a partner, something that you can sort of look at doing is alternating days with regards to what that set schedule and breakdown looks like, or you yourself and when you're communicating to your employer. So for example, I've encouraged you to break up your morning, midday, afternoon, and evening. So maybe on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you are dedicating the morning and midday towards work activities. And again, that schedule will be broken down even further. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's the reverse, where you look at, the afternoon and evening, or vice versa. And when you're partnering with someone, it's also looking at, of course, there's going to be a lot of different complications, a lot of different expectations, as well as a lot of different responsibilities and other meetings that they're also having to work through. We need to find that balance, and that balance comes with strong communication. It comes with daily or weekly schedules that may need to be aligned and even reworked on the fly. So that's where the flexibility really comes in. But I stress that it's about collaboration and it's about patience, and your children are going to be part of that collaboration. So that's where engaging your children becomes key as well to these ingredients of success and trying to tackle this call of duty that we've all been faced with without any preparation or warning. When we engage our kids, instead of just occupying them, it's very different. When we're engaging them, we're providing them purpose. We're freeing up your time to focus on other things and other responsibilities. So whether that's, your children engaging in some e-learning through school or not, it's important to keep their minds active and engaged, regardless of how old they are. Boredom is probably your worst enemy when it comes to trying to manage your children's time and also provide them the opportunity to allow you to do and fulfill your other duties and roles. So let your children choose what things they do. Ask them, let them set learning projects, let them explore. We really want to encourage that independent play in addition to that structured learning time. And there's benefits to that long term. While this is something that some of your children may not necessarily be accustomed to, because again, when you've been out working, or if you've been at school or they've been at school, when all of you have been under one roof, the relationship dynamic and interaction has been different in the past. It's about quality time. It's about having fun. It's, maybe it is about getting homework done. We find ourselves right now in having to learn new skills, but also provide the opportunities for our children to also benefit by learning new skills. And that really is about having a voice. So that really brings us back to the tips on creating a cooperative atmosphere. So if your child continues to interrupt you when you're talking, either to friends or to colleagues, there's ways that we can sort of approach this. And one is with regards to what I call the preview. So you want to discuss the plan of the day ahead of time. So when everybody's waking up in the morning and we have our breakfast together, it's a matter of discussing the plan for the day ahead. Agree when you will have time together and when you're not available. Remind your children, again, regardless of what age, the importance of, looking at this plan and doing what we need to do. You want to give them the opportunity to participate in that. So let your children choose what jobs they'd like to do. Tasks that should be obviously within their reach and not only their age appropriate, which I will give you some strategies, but have them, put together a chart, or if they're too young, you put the charts together for them so it's seen. Really try to build the confidence that while you have important things to do, they are equally important, and they, have a say, and they're, what they want to do or what they can't do is something that you're going to consider. You want to prepare as well. Prepare your colleagues, prepare your friends, even meetings that you're going to have, on how you might plan to deal with a particular situation if your child interrupts you. So it's a little bit more relaxed and comfortable. I remind you again, this isn't a personal situation. It's a communal situation. We're all experiencing this disruption. We're having to manage it. Some are finding it easier than others. And though we can't make those judgments and we can't make that assumption, it's about a dual respect relationship. And then the logical next step is to sort of plan ahead as to what you and how you might deal with the situation. So every day you're planning what that day looks like. So until the child adapts to this new routine and these new roles and expectations. So when we're looking at trying to achieve a shared mindset, we want to really drop sort of the traditional old type of controlling parenting model. And I use that term very loosely in the sense of, we put ourselves in positions where we try to manage the outcome. We try to sort of control how things are done in order to either direct family, direct our time, or just even to call the shots, let's be honest. So sharing the power with our children and other members in the household can really help create relationships based on cooperation and equality. And that is the shared mindset. So we want to allow routines and structure to be the boss, not you. Routines work best when the child has the say. We have to be consistent and we have to follow through. We need to focus on the needs of the situation. So by the needs of the situation or pointing out the routine in a matter of fact, really can avoid problems. We want to provide limited choices. We need to show that we understand and that you care. So again, regardless of how old your child is, it's not about reasoning with a 3-year-old, that they are beyond the capacity cognitively to be able to reason through. And though they can articulate what they want in the sense of, I want to play with Lego, or I want to watch a show, or whatever the case may be. And while it might change every 5 minutes, that's okay. It's about providing them the voice to really give them the platform to be involved, which also allows you the opportunity to make them accountable if they aren't able to stick to the structure or the routine. Ask your child for help. Children love to be resources for us, and give them jobs. Power over the situation instead of power over others. Get them involved. Use a respectful voice, and again, preview what's next. Always look at describing to the child, discussing with the child what the next steps are. One of the other aspects of a successful ingredient during this particular time and having to manage all these roles is you. And it's the me time that is really critical during this time. Give yourself a break. You are dealing with a lot, so cut yourself some slack. You won't be perfect in either work or childcare or teaching when your attention is divided. You're not alone in the struggles, and the purpose of today is to provide you, again, the different perspective and the permission to be able to prioritize the various roles that you are having to manage during the course of your day, so you don't get burnt out, so relationships aren't tarnished, that healthy relationships are maintained and even established. So intentional self-care is important during this time for you, and this is not part of dedicated family time. And while, I have encouraged some families to do, online exercise classes with their children as a means of family time, that doesn't take away from intentional self-care that you yourself need to introduce into your schedule and actually schedule it out. So some tips for various age groups. So although establishing a good work environment, good communication, and effective schedule are helpful, it's also too important to understand that the demands that your children will also have with regards to what that schedule looks like, what they need from you with regards to levels of engagement and even entertainment while you're working does greatly depend on how old your children are. So what works for a toddler is not going to generally work for a teenager. And if possible, plan to trade off. Again, if you do have a partner, trade off responsibilities with your partner around important work engagements. It's, again, the first step is open communication. It is about looking at what your current work from home situation is and not what it used to be. So now we're going to sort of dive into some of the differences and some tips and strategies with regards to the various age groups. So if you are in a home and you're having to, mind babies and toddlers, so we're looking at, anywhere from obviously newborns to 2 to 4 year olds, this is the age group that generally needs the most attention and flexibility from parents. So it is helpful to plan for meetings or tasks that require your full attention during your child's naps if you can. Or again, if that breaking down point with regards to morning, midday, afternoon, and evening also work. If you have a partner, divvying that up and sort of shifting gears with regards to alternating days as to, okay, well, you're going to take the morning and the afternoon shift with regards to minding the children on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then next week, I'll do Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays during that particular window of time. It's important to stay calm and maintain normal routines. This age group is really critical in the sense of what they are exposed to and what we are actually modeling. It is during this particular stage of development that what these children are relying on is what they're observing. And we can't necessarily, obviously dictate how they're going to interpret the situation because they're so little. And though how we model in what we are dealing with the situation or how we're dealing with it is something that's going to be learnt by these very young children and sort of taken and being contributed to how they view their own values and their own sort of growth and development. So one thing that, I sort of looked at and wanted to focus on is with regards to how we can make children of all ages part of the home life and sort of contributing to that. And while initially there might need to be a little bit of hand-holding and looking at sort of that guidance and that teaching model of hands-on experience, there are age-appropriate contributions that your children can make in the home. So I look at more of the 4-year-olds as being in the age group that they can contribute. So picking up toys and putting them away. We tend to do that for them. So doing that, dusting, scrubbing the veggies, wiping up spills, or even making sandwiches. So things of that nature that keeps them a bit busy. So we can also, not only are we teaching them a skill set that will further their development, but we're also looking and really putting together this framework that they are an important contribution to the family, which then in turn, as they get older, they will contribute more and they will actually be more responsive to responsibilities. Now, the early and elementary school age, that's a different ball of wax. We're looking at 5 to 9-year-olds. Now, working from home for an extended period of time with school-age children will likely mean balancing their schoolwork, other activities with your work schedule. There's a lot more creativity with regards to navigating different routines, different expectations, different attitudes, all under one within this particular age demographic. So the one thing that's really important is it is helpful to your children to know when and how they can communicate with you during this particular time. So when we're setting our schedule with our children around those expectations of schoolwork versus free time, they are part of this, and they need to be mindful of what and how they can engage with you during your work time. So one thing that I've sort of suggested in looking at is, those nonverbal cues. So I've already sort of dropped a few suggestions with regards to an out of office notification or a do not disturb notification of some sort, whether it be on your laptop because you're using the dining room table as your office, or maybe you have a separate room that you're able to use. So if the door is closed and that sign is on the door, that is your child's cue that it is to be uninterrupted. And because you've engaged them in and involved them in this collaboration of schedule, those expectations have already been set. So those boundaries have been established. Now, that's not to say it's going to be easy for them to follow, and though it will take patience, and you just have to fulfill and really follow through with the fact that this is a do not disturb opportunity. This is a window where you need to be focused on something else. And that's not to say that they are not important. It's a matter of really teaching them the opportunity to fulfill agreements, the opportunity to be independent, and really look at, finding creative ways that they can use in order to fulfill their time where they don't have to rely on you. This is the age to do it. This is the age to introduce that level of independence in small increments. And, it sounds kind of quirky to say, but truthfully, COVID-19 and this disruption has really provided us that opportunity to recalibrate the type of parenting that we have been doing with our children and actually make it more fun, make it more effective in their development. I do encourage you to limit screen time. Now, you can obviously have relaxed limits on screen time during important meetings in order to keep your child occupied. As you can say, I didn't say engaged, because again, we need to sort of adapt some of the normalcy of routine during our current situation. So whilst the school routine has definitely not been adopted in the same way that we were accustomed to prior to COVID, the reality is it's still school time. This isn't a holiday. And while things are uncertain and things seem to be a bit lax in routine and structures and responsibilities, that doesn't mean that everything is going to be lax. You want to be able to provide you a foundation of structure and routine that when things do go back and schools are open and you do leave the home to go to the office, or you do leave the home to travel, or they have to leave to go to school, it's going to be an easier transition back into that routine because you have filtered in some of that still within this new particular environment that we are all dealing with. Something else that's important to have with regards to the early and elementary school age is a boredom box. So filled with fun activities, toys, whatever that child can access during your work periods. So not only is it setting a set schedule and routine of expectations as to how they can engage during those particular times, but now you're also providing them the opportunity for pre-planning. So there's already that idea that, no, you know what, you don't want to do this anymore, or you're losing interest in this particular movie or this particular learning website. Go to your boredom box. And it's just an inherited next step as a proactive measure. Utilize online educational tools and other sort of online platforms that may be available. One of the handouts I've actually provided you is a list of free online learning resources. So some of them you might already have access to. Some are Canadian based, some are US based. And though they are free and accessible, which also include virtual field trips to different museums and planetariums and things like that. So there's a lot of different ideas there that you can tap into, some of which can be supervised. Others can actually be where your child engages in that on their own. When it does sort of look at having conversations around the current disruption, it is important to appreciate that, at this age, children have a greater awareness of current events. They've likely talked with friends about things, or they've overheard conversations that you've had, but their thinking is still concrete, which means that less is more. You want to, if you need to engage in a conversation with your children about the impact of COVID, or ask questions, about where they got their information from, and gently and calmly give them reassurance while remaining honest. So stick to the facts, be direct, but be simple. Limit their media exposure and really stick to normal routines as much as possible. And maybe part of that is developing new routines that you watch the news together to really allow the opportunity for your children to gain a perspective that is factual based and not opinion based. So age appropriate activities and contributions for the home. For your 5 to 9-year-olds, grate cheese. So if you're making dinner, setting the table, getting cereal and milk in the morning, cooking simple foods such as eggs, or tortillas, maybe, peeling the veggies, carrying in grocery bags, helping make the bed in the morning or change the sheets, mopping the floors, as well as the other age appropriates from our toddlers. The idea here again is part of the management of the roles that you are having to juggle is the appreciation that you don't have to manage all of those roles, or all of those roles in the ways that you envision them to be. There are aspects of those different family roles that we've all been sort of slotted into that can be recalibrated, can be reassigned, and we can really build the foundation of a collaborative and supportive family dynamic, which again includes your children, to better prepare you in order to achieve your expectations of those various roles and fulfill the expectations that others have of you. So middle school age children, so that's 11 to 15-year-olds. So as children mature, it is often appropriate and helpful, frankly, to get them to participate more actively in setting their schedules and managing their daily tasks and expectations. We've heard a number of times with regards to those helicopter parents and those overly involved parents. This is an opportunity to really allow your children the freedom to know that what they are committing to have responses or reactions or even consequences. So let them set their goals. Let them look at when they want to do schoolwork if it's not already scheduled in with regards to times of that set out. Setting the boundaries can also be helpful in achieving that. Discuss appropriate screen time limits, bedtimes, and other ways that your child can stay physically active. All of these things are really critical to their development as independent and, well, frankly, independent thinking adults, because that's really what we're really achieving here throughout our parenting of our children from the time that they are toddlers, is providing them and modeling for them a skill set that they can adopt in order to be healthy and productive adults. I've already again highlighted that within this age group, having conversations around the coronavirus and what's going on is going to be important. And though this particular age group tends to be focused on what will happen in the future, and I know also from having conversations with colleagues on my own and other friends of mine that tends to be an inherited thought process, that a lot of us, because of the uncertainty, are looking at, what's going to happen 3 months from now, what's going to happen 6 months from now. And the reality is we don't know. And when we are modeling that same panic and that same anxiety, our children do pick that up, and they adopt it as their own state of being. And yet they don't necessarily have the skill set or the coping mechanisms to successfully manage those stress levels. Whereas we as adults have had experience. We have years ahead of them to know that life throws curveballs, and you can't always know what that is going to look like, and we have to be flexible. So we need to teach our children to be the same, but also be resourceful and courageous to know that they can take on life's challenges and be successful at it. So age appropriate contributions of the home for the middle school age, so 11 to 15. Look out for younger siblings. Don't feel that you can't sort of have them also step up to the call of duty with regards to younger siblings and just sort of helping to mind them and keep them safe. They can read recipes and cook meals. They can order out from family. They can wash windows. They can wash mops. They can mow the lawn. They can also make the grocery list. So a lot of these different aspects may seem sort of silly, or you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, well, how is this going to make any difference? You know, I still have to work. I still have to, put together school for them because they're only getting 5 hours a week. All of these things are one piece of the puzzle. And when we take a step away and really appreciate the perspective that it is all of the different responsibilities that everyone in the household has that is actually going to complete the puzzle to allow people to achieve the things that they need to achieve in a more collaborative and less stressful way. So teenagers, adolescents, 16 plus, they are more abstract thinkers. So they are likely to have high awareness of the situation and probably, again, have had very in-depth conversation with peers. Teens, on the other hand, tend to have this more, persona or personality of independence that can come across as attitude. Let's not sugarcoat it. And though it's just part of their growth and development, and what we're trying to achieve here is that they are going to have responsibilities as adults when they join the workforce, or even in universities or college, depending on the path that they take, that won't necessarily allow them to be so self-focused, if you will. So we want to really engage them in conversation around coronavirus, conversations with regards to your expectations of them, but also be very clear as to expectations that are being put on you and what that actually means. Be direct, be clear, be very specific. So their role and their contribution to the home is going to be valuable. It's going to be important. When we give them value and we give them purpose, and we really, again, set those parameters with regards to expectations, they are more willing to adapt to those changes in routine. So age-appropriate contributions, taking care of the house, garden, the yard, give them an area of the home to clean, helping the younger children with homework. So, having them come in as teacher role for maybe a day or two and alternate, making appointments, looking at barbecuing food, changing light bulbs, running errands when appropriate and where appropriate. Provide them purpose. And in their fulfillment of that purpose, it gives them a sense of value within the home. And the one thing that we do know when we're dealing with sort of parent-child relationships at a young age and how that changes and develops, the one thing that all children want is that sense of appreciation. And at a very young age, what they equate to love is value. And while that does change as they get older, it is still something that inherently they have. If I do more, I will be loved more. So I see a hand. So Joyce, I'm going to unmute you if you'd like to ask your question. You're self-muted, Joyce. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can type it in the question box. Joyce Forget. Nope. Okay. We'll just continue because we're going into questions quite quickly. So to wrap things up, it really is setting new routines don't have to be regimented or perfect. And that said, the sense of complete chaos is more anxiety provoking for kids than having a schedule. And when you engage in power struggles, that is only going to cause more problems and will not allow for collaboration and being able to, move forward in a positive way. So during this time, we find ourselves, really, I'm encouraging us to be in a time of compassion, resiliency, and perseverance. We are all in this together, and together we are improvising, we're adapting, and with that we will overcome. So don't look at struggling with your children. Look at providing a structure, a step sort of process of establishing independence for them. Making them part of decisions, part of that schedule and routine and how they want to look at that. Set aside shorter periods of quality time when you have to be away with other responsibilities and actually focus on the need that your child may have at that time. Be mindful of what you are modeling. If they perceive you to be anxious or scared or worried, then that's what they're going to pick up. And even if your words are different, it doesn't matter. Children are all about observation, and it is through observation of your attitude, which comes across through behavior as well as tone, that they use to formulate their own interpretation of the situation. So we want to build the association that when an adult is sitting there, they're working, right? So sometimes, having a designated specific area or work zone and using that consistently is going to achieve that. We want to be able to be mindful of what our own limits are, what our stress levels are, our coping mechanisms. There are simple tips in order for us to really highlight a better management of all those roles. And it's really starting with expectations and re-establishing new expectations as to how you envision yourself to be in that role. Some changes needed during this unique time, and it's clear to us that collectively, the efforts of everyone, provinces, territories, education associations and institutions, as well as each one individually, including your children, need to be in line with a path moving forward and looking forward to new opportunities. So I've included here a perspective shift for you to read. I'm not going to take up people's time because I'm looking at the time and sort of mindful that we are concluding shortly. But I do sort of invite you that whatever your life's pursuit, I hope that your new perspective and some of the tips that you learned today, you will take away, you will talk to your family, you will engage in, that shared mindset and collaboration of dual respect in order to achieve a bit more victory. It is right now in this time that we are provided the gift of growth and to embark on a new journey. So definitely embrace that new perspective. And I thank you for your time. So I'd like to open up the floor to any questions or comments that people might have. So I do see a few within the question box. And yes, we will definitely look at providing you a recording to the presentation today. I'm not really sure that we will be providing with regards to the whole presentation slide deck. And though if there's aspects of it that you wish to share with other individuals, please don't hesitate to forward the recordings, which will be available on our website as well. Is there any other questions that people might have? Thank you for your time as well. Thank you. Now, it is the case where the screen that you have right now on your screens will show you the up-and-coming mental wellness webinars link, as well as if you want to either have questions about today's webinar or you want to discuss customized webinars, please don't hesitate to drop me an email, and we can definitely look at discussing those various details. And then if you are looking for the recordings, then there's also a link there that we provided you with regards to previous webinars, as well as the recording of this one will be posted on that. So there's a question with regards to expecting whether or not our employers just to understand, and frankly, that's an assumption. You know, we are all working with a new norm, and we are not all in the same headspace with regards to our perception of what that looks like for someone else. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We don't know what someone's home life is like. You know, maybe someone does have a partner in their life, and though it still is a one parent type of household dynamic. So it's really important that when you are setting that structure and that routine in order to better manage all the different roles that you have to fulfill within your household, in taking into consideration everybody else's routine within that same household and expectations, when you are communicating to your employer, it is being clear and transparent as to what you are able to do. And it's not about being less productive. It's about establishing a new parameter as to what that productivity actually looks like. You can't expect to, fulfill or have a similar performance when the environment has changed. There's other variables that need to be considered. It's not that you have undedicated time. So while employers might expect, different productivity, you need to really outline what that expectation looks like and what they're actually going to get from you. So it really helps in establishing those boundaries, and also allows you to have that collaboration with your employer as to what they can expect from you, but more importantly, what you expect of yourself, given your lived, in-person situation with all of those responsibilities that you have. With regards to suggestions of reducing hours, that is a bit tricky because we're only in, an adjustment phase still right now. And while we were all with the impression that it was only a 2-week period, there's still a lot of unknown as to how long this is. I think the first and foremost conversation that needs to be had with your employer is with regards to the structure and routine and schedule that you've put in place within your household that looks at those various windows of work time blocks, and then using that as a platform of discussion. If it is a matter of reducing work hours, that is going to have to be looked at and discussed on a case-to-case basis. And though you don't want to go in armed with that as being the only solution and the only strategy. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We're just after 2 o'clock. I'm perfectly fine with sitting in the room a little bit longer if there's any additional questions. I thank you all again for making yourselves available for this webinar, and I look forward to seeing you all in future webinars as well. Have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive.